Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
I hear high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, hey, you caught me just as I was coming home from the gym. That's right. Working out hard, all sweaty. But if anybody sees these video clips for this episode, man, I apologize. I'm a little red in the face and my beard's all over the place. So,
real humble brag there, Scotty.
Yeah. That's what I was going for. Just ballpark figure. What do you think I can bench press?
I don't know, about
315 pounds. No, I can't bench press that much, but yeah. So anyway, just apologies in advance for having to look at my face.
And what were you doing at the gym today? What were you working on?
Oh, we were doing some deadlifts, some pull-ups, then I don't know, a bunch of other stuff that doesn't have as fun sounding names, but yeah, I got a sweat on and it's good. Not hard to do in end of July here.
No,
but it was good. It was good.
Yeah, easy to get a sweat on when you are sweating from walking from the car to the gym. It's easy to continue that once you start working out.
Very true, Sean. I walk to the gym. Thank you very much.
Better. Even better. It has cooled off here, I'll say, in the nation's capital a little bit. I didn't need to sleep with the fan directly on me last night, which is an improvement over the past few days. So it's getting a little better here, but hopefully everyone is enjoying some of the summer weather as much as you can out there across the country and around the world. It's always a fun time. And Scott, as you're in the gym, we're 7-8 weeks from opening night at the Ottawa Curling Club. You got to get that off season work in, although I don't know why you need to, because you're moving to skip. So whatever.
I'm going to be the best sweeping skip at the club. That's my goal.
All the other skips are 70 years old. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So middle of summer, we don't typically have a lot of curling news, but the news fairy has come out in droves this week in the world of North American curling, at least. And let's start with the story that has gotten a lot of social media attention, but that I don't fully understand. This is the USA Curling Association's decision to kick out GNCC from the USA Curling. Scott, what exactly is going on here from what you've read about it?
So,
and who is GNCC too?
Yeah, so the Grand National Curling Club, GNCC, is basically like an association of clubs within the US that is a member body of USA Curling. So there's a bunch of different associations, like in Canada, right? Our provincial associations all form Curling Canada. They're all a subsidiary to it. So the GNCC is mostly on the East Coast. Bunch of curling clubs. I think they say over 5,000 curlers, 70 clubs in their region. And they have been expelled by USA Curling. And from what I can understand, obviously I'm not an expert on this, and we will effort to get somebody on who can talk to it at a little more detail than we can, is that GNCC wasn't paying their membership fees to USA Curling during the pandemic because they didn't have any money because no one was curling. And because they weren't following the bylaw of paying the dues, then they were unanimously voted out of USA Curling. And the GNCC is a lot more focused on grassroots curling. In the East Coast, where their member clubs are, it's much more recreational, get players out curling, whereas USA Curling of late especially has been more focused on the high performance area. And so there's a balance to be struck between the two, but it seems like there's a bit of some friction between these two groups anyway, and that's how it went. So, like I say, we'll try to find a better person to talk to this than us, and if I'm misrepresenting at all, please let us know on social media, and we'll correct it.
Yeah, we certainly want to get this right. We're not there. We don't know a lot of the specifics, but from what we've been able to ascertain, that the tension between GNCC and USA Curling is not new, and that GNCC, as you say, in terms of the fees, hasn't disbarred clubs who haven't paid the fees because they haven't been playing during the pandemic for a variety of reasons, not least of which is certain arena clubs just haven't been able to get ice time during the pandemic, or arenas have closed or whatever it is. So there's a lot going on there. As Scott says, we will endeavor to get somebody on to talk about it. I would not be surprised either at some point in the future, as this all plays out, if our friends over at Rocks Across the Pond perhaps wade into this as well. Certainly Jonathan has a lot of experience with USA Curling. Ryan is down there. I know they're on they're a bit of a break right now, but I would imagine at some point they'll talk about it as well as we hope to in the future. But yeah, some big news out there at GNCC, and I'll tell you, or with GNCC, and I'll tell you, full credit to our friends at Palmetto Curling Club, who are really having a good time with this on social media, making the most of a bad situation and having a good time, or at least making as light of it as possible.
For sure. And let's just hope that curling will continue, under the GNCC, and whatever happens, let's just hope people are able to get back to curling as safely as possible and as soon as possible.
Yeah, and we've seen some people here weigh in on it too. I saw a tweet from Darren Molding talking about how there's a certain level, in his view, of hypocrisy amongst some of the curling bodies relative to some of the bylaws and the rules that are in place that hurt the people who want to play the most. And I think we see some tension, certainly here in Canada, between the high level, Olympic level performance, those type of programs, and the grassroots. And it's unfortunate that the idea that we want to put forth in these various associations, high level players who can win Olympic medals, who can win world championships, but also support the grassroots. It's unfortunate that somehow is in conflict, because I really think those things can work in concert with each other, and frankly need to work in concert with each other for the overall well-being of the sport. But no one is, at least in North America, has really figured this out to anyone's real satisfaction. USA Curling has gotten a lot of criticism over the past few years, certainly, and Curling Canada is, in their effort to try to walk this fine line, seems to be dissatisfying high-level players and a lot of the member associations across the country. So it's not easy, certainly, but these discussions are ongoing, and I'm sure we will see significant changes over the next few years to high performance programs and how they relate to the grassroots game, and whether or not the two are related at all at some point, or if they're just completely separated out.
Yeah, it's tough because the high performance gets all the coverage and needs money for sure, but the grassroots also needs money too, and you're right, it's hard to balance that, and we'll see how that balance is adopted the next quadrennial, and then going forward after that.
Yeah, because there are questions at play too. I think Justin, is it McKenney, or he's a CBC reporter in BC. He had a tweet yesterday about an abandoned curling club, and I saw it might have been Palmetto too. Said something about Canada has more abandoned curling clubs than the USA has curling clubs in general. But it is an issue in this country, certainly, that facilities are closing and memberships aren't increasing. And so there are going to be questions that need to be asked. So we will continue to follow this story, and as we say, try to get somebody from GNCC on, and we'll also reach out to USA Curling and see what we can put together. So that's what's going on south of the border. The big news in the world of curling north of the border Scott, is that for the first time in 8 years, and by my count, only the fourth time ever, a seat is open in the TSN booth as Cheryl Bernard, who is, of course, the CEO of Canada Sports Hall of Fame out in Calgary, has announced that she will not be returning to TSN this upcoming season. Her responsibilities with the Hall of Fame, as well as just some family obligations, or not even obligations, but family things she wants to do, certainly taken priority in her life. We've seen that over the past couple of years. She hasn't been at every event, hasn't been as present as Vic and Russ have been, and that makes sense when you're the CEO of a major organization that takes a lot of time out of your day. I think it was fortunate for Cheryl that the bubble was probably like a 5-minute walk from her office. That I think worked out quite nicely for her back in 2020. But Scott, what was your reaction to the news that Cheryl Bernard is going to be leaving our screens?
Oh, I thought that's too bad, but like you say, she's not been there for every event. So, she was very good when she was in the booth with brokering between Russ and Vic, which is in itself not an easy job, and provided some really good insight and a bit of a different perspective than we got from Linda before, who was her predecessor. So she was very good in the booth, very good on TV, very good with her colleagues. So it'll be a loss, and she'll be pretty tough to replace, I think.
Yeah, and I think the real mark of how good Cheryl was as a broadcaster is that you really noticed when she wasn't there for those draws or events when she wasn't there. And I mean, with all due respect to Cheryl and to Team Scheidegger, when she was subbing in for Casey there in 2021, I really wanted them to lose so that Cheryl could get back into the booth, because it really was noticeable when she wasn't there. So it is certainly going to be a difficult job for whoever steps in. I really feel like they do need a third person in that booth. Vic and Russ on their own, I have no problem with them. And even together, they're fine. But having a buffer there has, I think, been demonstrated to be useful for them. So the question then leads to who is going to get that chair in the booth. And I tweeted this, Scott. Lineup changes are fine. Who's playing with who's going to go to the Olympics? Yeah, okay, we can all get all excited about that. This change, whoever they decide, is going to have so much more of an effect on my enjoyment of curling than anything the teams on the ice could do. Like, of all the lineup shuffles, this is the one I care the most about, and it's not even close.
Well, this is every draw, right? This is always in your living room. Whereas, I might see the new Team Cooey, once a day. This broadcast team is going to be all the time, and it's going to be at every event going forward. So it is important that they get it right, but I wouldn't rule out, having a rotating chair for a year, right? We don't have to crown somebody right away. So Sean, who's your guess? Who is coming in? This is total guessing, by the way. We
have absolutely no insight on who this is going to be. Part of this is, I think, who we might. Part of this, I think, is who we want this to be, or who we might want this to be. And I think when we're looking at that share, there's a couple things to keep in mind. The one criticism that you might have of Cheryl relative to what the booth was with Vic and Russ, a little skip centric, an inability at times to look at the game from a non-skip perspective. So do you want somebody who isn't a skip? I might say yes to that. I think one of the things that was great about Ray Turnbull is that he wasn't a skip, and he could certainly look at the strategy, but he had the perspective of a non-skip. And then just in terms of banter, he and Linda, of course, Linda being a skip, would go back and forth a little bit about who's more important, the front end or the back end, right? So that was fun. And just seeing the game from different angles. So I think that's part of it. I think you want somebody who is personable the curling broadcast booth is very different from like football or hockey or basketball, where action is always going there and you're always
Mhm.
breaking down what's going on. In curling, there's more storytelling, there's more banter, it's more baseball like, and that there's
Mhm.
time to fill where you can chat.
Yeah.
So you want somebody who's going to be comfortable. The chemistry is going to have to be there with Vic and with Russ. So with all of those factors in play, my mind initially went to Jill Officer, arguably the best second ever. She has some TV experience. And what makes it for me is that she was so good with the crowd through her career. Even during high pressure games, she would engage with the crowd. I remember Continental Cups when people would have their headphones in and listening to the broadcast, that she had a lot of fun with that, and she would really try to egg on the crowd, engage with folks. So to me, that is who I initially thought of as a really good person who could fit into that booth. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, yes. She was the first one I thought of too. Obviously, we've talked on this show before that Chelsea Carey would be amazing. She's very frank and has a lot of experience and is very, very knowledgeable in the game, but she's still playing.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. There was also another player who just retired or took a step back, in Joanne Courtney, who's great on social media, which might be something that TSN is looking for, to try and reel in some of the younger viewers.
Yeah. I mean, hey, she could do a push-up challenge against Russ.
Yeah.
see
Yeah. I
how
wonder
that
who would win.
see how that goes.
But like she is quite good on TikTok
Yeah.
and Instagram, and that's not something that I think is important, but it is something that could be important to decision makers. How she was in the booth, I didn't really mind it during the Olympics. That was a really tough assignment, being in a a booth sort of split, so you can't even see the people you're working with, calling games remotely, really tough. So I think she's got the skills that she could build up to being very, very, very good at that, even if right now she's just good.
Right.
So those are like the names that come to mind. I think I was thinking yesterday too that, yeah, we have Vic and Russ and Mudrick, and Kathy Gauthier is great, but as you said, she's sort of great at what she does, and that's really hard to do, and that's probably harder to replace than just somebody else in the main booth. So she'll be getting some consideration for sure. But I was thinking, like, why don't we have more female broadcasters that get brought into the curling stable that aren't necessarily ex players, that could come along and be the host, once Vic retires, and in theory Mudrick becomes the main person, although if he doesn't want to, then we're going to have a gap. And like, women's curling and men's curling are both equally exciting on TV to me. And just because it's been Vic, who's a legend, who's a man, why can't we get like an all female booth in there? And not only for the women's games, for the men's games too. I think it would be
Yeah.
refreshing.
Yeah, well, I think the answer to that question is that Vic got hired in 1970, whatever, and
Yeah,
hasn't,
yeah.
or 80, whatever, and hasn't left. And on the CBC side, it's the same thing. It's guys who did it in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then eventually it wasn't I, right? When you had the two Dons doing it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the hiring of the people who are the main voices of curling, and have been the main voices of curling, date back to a time when women weren't being considered for play-by-play positions, and no, those jobs haven't opened. But yeah, I think it would be interesting, and I don't know what Mudrick would do if he was presented with the choice of, hey, you can be the full-time, like Vic's retiring, you can be the full-time curling guy, the season of champions guy, or you can stick with your Canadians
Yeah.
job, and maybe those two things could somehow coincide. I don't know if TSN has enough Canadians games that it would be an issue for him to go do a few weeks of curling. But TSN has a full roster of really talented women broadcasters. You see them on the Raptors a lot. People like Kayla Gray, for instance. Natasha Staniszewski, I think, is gone from TSN.
Yeah.
But who am I thinking of? Kate Berness is another one who's really good. She hosts the halftime now at the Raptors. Like, so there's a lot of women at TSN who could come in and potentially do play-by-play. I don't disagree. The question, though, is for the chair that's currently open, I think it does need to be a player to come in. But do you take this opportunity to maybe rejig the entirety of what your broadcast team is? And do you have, say, if Mudryk is going to go do the Canadians, then do you bring in a woman who then is in that position of this is the Vic's successor? If Mudryk wants to go do hockey, then then that's an interesting discussion. And I really do think that Kathy Gauthier has the hardest job in television of an on-person individual, because she has to be on TV for 9 hours a day. That's so much time. And I know she's not active during the late 2 games for the whole thing, but she has to pay attention the whole time. She's got somebody in her ear. She's got to do the updates. Like, her job is really, really hard. And to ask somebody new to come in and say, hey, Kathy's going to go do the Cheryl job, now you come in and do the Kathy job, it'd be like, what? What do you want me to do? Wait, I have to get up at what time I have to get up? And I'm getting back to the hotel. What? Like, I don't so like that's a huge ask of somebody who maybe is potentially never broadcasted before.
Yeah. And like you say, we've been to events. Even going to watch exhausting. 3 games a day is exhausting. So like, you're right. Having the added pressure of watching everything else and seeing what's interesting, it's really, really hard. I think we should train somebody to do that just for the sake of Kathy's health. But but yeah, I think I don't know. I guess I got off on a tangent about having an all-female booth, and I think that would be pretty great.
Yeah.
But for now, I think those 3 that we talked about, or I guess 2, Jill Officer and Joanne Courtney, are the ones. And then I think TSN would like Jennifer Jones in the booth, right? And she's very good at TV as well. So whether she plays full-time or not with her new team, I think that's what TSN wants.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, right? Because in a normal year, TSN would have until the Canada Cup in December to figure this out. They have less time this year. Assuming it hasn't been formally announced, but we figure that they're going to be the ones broadcasting this single elimination tournament that's coming up in September. So they don't have as much time. And Vic is doing F1 stuff, and Russ is, I don't know, whatever Russ does. I know he golfs. He's probably just golfing all summer. But you would think too that whoever they bring in, they would have them do a couple games like on tape, even if they're not in the same room together, but just games that have already taken place. And then they can and work together as sort of simulate it in advance. So you don't have a lot of time to figure this out, which could lead to just Vic and Russ in September. And then if Team Jones / Zacharias, if they don't make the Canada Cup, maybe then Jennifer Jones is there. And then when you get to the Scotties, maybe it's a player from a team who doesn't qualify. And then at the Briar, you have a wider option pool because the women aren't playing at that time. So maybe that is what they do for the year and sort of test things out and see who has the best chemistry and who would want the job. But it's going to be interesting to watch. So we have Joanne Courtney, we have Jill Officer as the 2. About Joanne Courtney too, I would say CBC. And it's not really CBC's fault, but they didn't really do her any favors during the Olympics. That she's doing games. She's never really done games a lot in her career. She's doing them on a screen. She's doing them from Toronto. So it's the middle of the night where she is. And I know they tried to adjust their body clock, but it's really hard to do when you're not in that other place.
Yeah.
And she's not in the same space with the other people. Like she's looking at Mike Harris through like prison glass and like touching like it's not like what are we doing here? So
Yeah.
I don't think that the CBC presentation during the Olympics was particularly strong. Some of that, and if not all of it, is related to the circumstances they were under. So I will forgive a lot of what happened during the Olympics. So it'd be interesting to see what would happen in a situation where she's not learning on the fly with people who are also adapting to new situations. So everyone's learning on the fly. If she were to come in, she's coming into a very well-oiled machine, and who can support her probably better than the people at the CBC were in position to support her, because they also had to adjust on the fly. Jill Officer, I think maybe slightly more natural from what we've seen over the years, but we'll have to see how it plays out. But let's talk about potentially some other names, Scott, because I've written down a couple here of choices that might seem strange, a little off the wall, but who knows? Things can happen.
Okay. I like to hear this.
So the one you mentioned, Chelsea Carey, we of course would fully support Chelsea Carey. I don't think she's coming to the booth because she's still playing. But somebody who's not still playing, who I think would be great. I don't know if there's enough oxygen between Russ and Heather Nedohin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that would be great, Sean. You're right. That's that would be a lot of energy in the booth.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. And I for everything I said, I do think it should be a front end player. Heather Nedohin might be my exception to that. Heather Nedohin is very energetic. She's always been great on the mic. A very charismatic person. The problem potentially would be, could she learn to not curse as much? She's broadcasting. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
Another name that I wrote down here from a very great Kelly Scott teams, Sasha Carter. I always thought was a very energetic, fun player out there. Someone who I don't think got enough credit for how good she was as a player, but also as good as she was as a TV personality, which we talked about with Kirk Myers last year, sort of the TV character of it. I always thought Sasha Carter was a good TV character.
Yeah, that should be very good too, and would bring that front end perspective. I like that one, Sean. I like that.
Okay. And another one from the sort of kind of retired-ish, Marianne Arsenault. Tons of experience, really obviously a very successful career. And yes, she's been a skip for the past decade plus, but she does bring the front end experience, as all of her world championships, were with Colleen Jones in that very famous team in the early aughts. So I think someone like Marianne Arsenault could be an interesting possibility.
Yeah, even Kim Kelly from the same team would be a lot of fun to have in the booth. So yeah, those are some good names, Sean. Anybody else?
No, those are the ones that I had written down.
Okay.
That initially came to mind. It's interesting, Scott, to think, like, I was thinking about this yesterday, like, for as much as I love front end players, and I think front end players need more recognition and respect, it's hard to remember a lot of them from like 20 years ago, right? Like,
well, you're right, Sean. There's one that we did forget, and it's of course Steph Mumford Nee Ledrew.
But she's playing again. She's back on a team.
Well, give her the contract. See how much.
She's good. I mean, she was great when she did the juniors.
Yeah, she was really great.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So come on back, Steph.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. We'll see. The other one, I mean, Dawn McEwen just retired, but this job involves talking on the mic, which was never. I mean, Dawn McEwen, in the very few interactions I've had with Dawn McEwen, they've been very pleasant, and she certainly comes across as a wonderful woman, but she never really seemed to seek out the limelight. I think that's fair to say. So I don't know how much she would be interested in a broadcasting job. I think she would be very very perceptive if she did it. I think she'd have really good insights into the game because she really seems like somebody who, whenever she did talk during a game, you'd be like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. Yeah, like, and certainly in terms of the sweeping, the strategy, the runs in the ice, like I think she'd be very good given all of her knowledge. But again, based off of her career as what we saw on TV, I don't know if she'd want to take that on.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at Steph's Instagram, and she put out a little video about it, about the announcement.
Okay.
Perhaps I can be of some assistance. So there you go, Sean.
All right.
She'd sign the check or sign the contract and take the money and run. That's what I say.
All right. Well, there you go. Team English. You need a new player.
Look out.
Yeah. So there you go. So who did we miss? Who might you want to see? And what is the most important to you as a television personality? Could we see some poaching potentially from the Sportsnet crew? Probably not. But maybe. Who knows? Joan McCusker? I don't know. That's really the only person they have. That's the only full-time woman they have on the Sportsnet crew, right? Is Joan? Do they have another one?
Yeah.
I don't think they have another one.
No.
Yeah. So maybe.
That's it.
But probably not. Yeah. So yeah, there you go. So that's our thoughts on the big change over at TSN Curling. Let us know who you might want to hear on the calls as we head into a new season of Champions. And as we say, we will also endeavor to learn more and more about what's going on in the United States. So there you have it. A little news from the news fairy here in the middle of July, as we thank you all for joining us, but that'll be it. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Wherever you get your podcasts, your likes, ratings, comments, all that other good stuff helps other people find the show, keeps us growing. Head on over to GameOfStonesPod.com. All of our past episodes under the podcast tab. Of course, we also have the merch. All proceeds to the Sandra Smirler Foundation and to Food Banks Canada. If you're watching or watched any of the clips from this, I'm wearing one of the t-shirts that are available on the site with proceeds to Food Banks Canada. We, of course, match those. And if you want to reach out, let us know what you want to hear on the show. GameOfStonesPod@gmail.com, at Game of Stones Pod, Instagram and Twitter, and Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. And I think that's going to be that. So, Scott, it's the middle of July. You saw Hamilton last week at the National Arts Center. I saw it last night, also at the National Arts Center. And
Yes.
Was it everything you dreamed it would be?
Sean, it was really, really, really good. And I thought all of the actors were great. We even saw an understudy playing Eliza, and I was like, wow, if she's the understudy, what's the main one like? She was so great. Yeah, I really loved it. And I haven't talked to you about your experience yet. So what did you think?
Yeah, it was very good. Certainly enjoyed it. And, a couple of sort of things here and there. I thought the guy who played George Washington got a little operatic at points. And I'm like, oh, maybe not.
Yeah, I would say the thing I liked the least was his beginning of One Last Time.
Yeah,
where
that's where he got operatic.
It's supposed to build, right? And so he's trying to keep it quiet, I guess, or whatever. But he does have a beautiful voice, and it got there by the end.
Yeah.
And I just sort of wish that he had just done that the whole time. But yeah, and at the NAC, I don't know. I think they did some repairs, some work on it during the pandemic. But the sound for musicals has never been great for me. It's either the band is too loud or it's too quiet, and we did have some microphones cut out at a couple points in the show when we saw it. But I mean, overall, the cast was incredible, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it wasn't as echoey as other musicals I've seen in that theater. So, yeah. So, if Hamilton comes to your town, get a chance to see it, certainly worthwhile, I would say.
Go see it. Definitely go see it.
Yeah. So there you go. That's our review of the touring company of Hamilton. That'll do it for this week. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll be back with you again next week. But until then, Keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.